A legend in the field of sports data is doing something remarkable for women's college basketball, and we are here to tell you about it first. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, brought to you by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Howard Megdal, thanking you for making us your first listen every day. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube among them. And of course, it's not just me on this team, it's the whole team bringing you all the women's basketball coverage at thenexthoops.com. $9 a month, $72 a year. Subscribe for over 100 reported pieces on the game of women's basketball. And our guest here today, and we're going to talk about segment one, is about Sean Forman's origin story, how he ended up here, how he has provided, and you'll forgive me for saying so, Sean, a great gift that has changed, in my eyes, the way people come to understand the games that I care about, and more significantly, the way in which those of us here in sports media do the work itself. But to talk about Sean's arc to this present day here in segment one is something that's important for, I think, everyone here in the listening audience to understand. Segment two, we're going to talk about what it means that today, women's college basketball is available as part of the sports reference pantheon of data. And so, Sean, welcome to the show. I want to just start out by the following. I was having breakfast with my younger daughter this morning, and I was excited about the fact that we didn't get to chat about this. And she said, you know what? Okay, so what is it? I said, well, so it started with baseball reference. Well, what's baseball reference? So I went down to my basement and I brought up an old copy of the baseball encyclopedia. And I'm saying, all right, Duke Snider was Pa Ira's favorite player. Well, we got to flip all the way to the S's. We got to look to see. And these are basic stats. This is just basic. You can't compare. How do you compare him to Willie Mays or Mickey Mantle? Well, not so easily. Well, how do you see he had 40 home runs 5 years in a row? Who else has done that? Well, you can't see any of that. I said, Sean Foreman came along and changed forever all of those understandings. Take me through when you knew this was more than just a CD-ROM side project that you're working on instead of doing your schoolwork, which is something I can definitely relate to. And this became something you thought could be a going concern.
Well, I mean, it's been a very long trip to get to where we're at right now. I've been doing this, I think Baseball Reference launched 23 years ago, about earlier, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was our 23rd anniversary. Mm-hmm. So it was, I was doing it on the side. I loved web design. I always loved sports statistics. My dad was a football coach, and in junior high, I would help him collect. I'd do the tackle chart for the high school team, and help compile stats, and later played for him, and so it's always been something I've loved, and I thought the web would be a great way to make an encyclopedia, because for exactly what you described, if I'm on Duke Snider, looking at Duke Snider, and I want to see his teammates, I'd have to leaf through about 1,000 pages to get through the Dodgers roster page to see, and then leaf back to see, how many stats, how many home runs Gil Hodges had, or something right. Like that. So it was, it felt like hyperlinking and creating a really interconnected database of sports stats would just be a lot of fun to do, and I think it would be interesting. I actually did it on the side for 6 years, so I just kind of, I joke we've just never quit doing it, and so thankfully other people enjoy it, like yourself enjoyed it as well, and so it's just kind of really grown organically, just one day after another for the last 23 years to get to where we are now.
And again, I warned you about this before we came on the air, like to lavish this praise. I have said this, I have made this very public. I will not stop saying it until it happens. You belong in the Baseball Hall of Fame for what you have done. And I say that not in any sort of hyperbole. I'm saying this as a sports journalist. My arc, and we've known each other a long time, so like my arc was when you're doing this, I'm just getting out of school. I'm just starting in this work. So for the last 23 years, I have used it not just as somebody who cares about the game of baseball, and then over time have been able to basketball, football, men's and women's sports as you guys have continued to expand. But it changes for me the stories I'm able to tell. The fact that I'm able to go and say, wow, that seems incredible. Well, I can go to Sports Reference, I can run a search, I can find out that, oh, it's incredible. Only 3 people have ever done that. Or, oh my God, nobody has ever done that before. Was there a moment in time where you made that intuitive leap, not just from, wow, this makes it easier because I can click on the Brooklyn Dodgers and I just don't need to know that Gil Hodges hit 370 home runs by virtue of being raised by my father, and instead to know, wow, this is a means of comparison. This is a means for understanding players in context.
Yeah, I mean that's always been an underlying goal of we've always felt that was very important. Anything we do, we try to try to present the context around it, and the stats we focus on are very context dependent. OPS plus on baseball, the scouting reports we have on the soccer site, the everything we do is trying to. I like to think of it as we answer questions for users about the players or teams that they're interested in. Mm-hmm. And so it's really like, how will this be useful? What kind of questions can this answer? I mean, we get hundreds of emails from users every month. We answer them all. We log them all. If there are good ideas in there, we put them in our backlog for our database of ideas and stuff like that. So it's I think being in tune with the users, being users ourselves, makes us hopefully makes the product ever more useful and more satisfying to use.
When I go to the site, and this is Baseball References, any of it, there's an element of fun too that you bring to it, in terms of nicknames, in terms of the fact that I'm on the baseball side. There is Keith Hernandez with his mustache having his own page about it. Right. Is that coming from you? Is that coming from just like a group of people who, and this is sort of what it's always been for me, you guys love the history behind it, not just the raw numbers themselves, not just like a compilation exercise, but it seems like an exercise in joy to me.
Yeah, it definitely is. We, it probably, hopefully I give people the room to do those things. And I think I do. We, it's gotten to the point now where, if something comes out like Madison Bumgarner's doing rodeo on the weekends, that we'll throw his page in there and put his alias on his page and stuff like that, without even, me having to prompt somebody to do that. So there are a number of things like that. I think, I think there's a perception sometimes that the statisticians and the historians are kind of snooty and they're like, we hate the fun in the game. We don't want, any of that. And so we definitely lean the other direction and, and try to have some fun with things like that. We recently added progressive carries to our soccer site as a stat, and so to announce that, we pretended to do like a signing ceremony for on our Twitter account to announce that for and stuff like that. So I think we definitely try to have fun, and it's our company meetings are always a joy. We're a remote company, but when we get together, we have a good time and go to games and stuff like that. So I think we legitimately enjoy working with each other.
And people stick around. And I am just going to point out, and this is important, you need to subscribe to Play Index. I can't stress that enough.
Right. Well, StatHead now. It's called StatHead now. You're old school, Howard, because you call it Play Index, but yeah, it's called Stat. It's on StatHead.com. But yes.
Look, Sean, I used to sponsor individual pages. I go way back with you guys. But yes, subscribe to StatHead. Make sure you're doing it, because it's not even just a question of figuring out context within individual players, but I discover things through StatHead that end up informing stories. I end up looking and seeing players who I didn't realize were necessarily in the company of X, Y, and Z. I wrote a story about Hans Schuh last year on the WNBA side, where it was something that I discovered through looking at Hanshu's site. And I will just be honest, like full disclosure, not even in the course of doing my work, but because what I do in my own time is I look up Hanshu stats. It's just, clearly the way in which, I mean, it's why I was so cool, obviously, growing up in school.
Me too. So
I,
yeah.
we are like-minded here. All right, I want to talk about what this means for women's sports specifically, because it's a really big deal. Training this lens on women's sports. I do first want to talk to the people at home about Prize Picks. All right, Prize Picks is daily fantasy, but it's daily fantasy in a way that you're not going up against other people. You are going up against yourself. How does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go score more or less than the Prize Picks projection rather, you either can lose or win. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. In the same way that Sports Reference matters to me, what matters to me at Prize Picks is that equality is a part of what they do. So yeah, it's NBA, but it's also WNBA. Is it men's college basketball? Yes, it's also women's college basketball. They have MLS. Yes, they also have National Women's Soccer League. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe and fast withdrawals, and they currently operate in over 30 states and Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up. It's free money for an instant deposit match up to $100. That is Prize Picks. All right. So baseball has always been data, numbers. We can go back to Alan Roth and the Brooklyn Dodgers. You can go back further. Branch Rickey hired a statistician when he was still with the St. Louis Browns over 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Women's sports, we have had this yawning chasm, this lack of understanding. I'm just going to kind of give you sort of as a side story about my own experience. I'm covering the 2016 NCAA women's basketball tournament. Breanna Stewart is on the cusp of winning her 4th national title and most outstanding player in the process. And I have, and we don't have to mention names, but the subscription to that time, the only thing going, and it was a very difficult to navigate site. It made me yearn for Sports Reference on a daily basis, and it had an outage in March. So suddenly they're not answering emails. They're not responding to everything. I'm writing about Breanna Stewart, and I'm trying to give a context for what she's doing. And it's like, how is Breanna Stewart doing? Great. How does it compare? It's probably amazing. And that's it. And that's 2016, Sean. That is less than 7 years ago. Right. How do we get from there to where we are today, where you have a site here that has everything back to 2009, 2010. And as I understand it, and again, it makes sense based on everything you guys do, this is just the beginning of gathering data. So take me through that. Take me through that journey for you.
Sure. We, there are several things that go into that. We, among our company values is data democratization. And so we view that in a couple different ways. One of it is, we make our site very easy to use. You can download information off our site. You can share it with others, so we want to make it freely available to the public. And there's very little that's not, the StatHead subscription aside, everything is available and you can put it into Excel or, however you want to use it. Mm-hmm. The other part of that is that we want to cover sports that have been neglected and sometimes by us and sports that have not been given the coverage that they should have been given over the last decades. And so part of that we've dramatically expanded our WNBA site. Right now is pretty much on par with our NBA site. It's almost equivalent. There are a few data sets here or there that we're missing that we need to fill in, but it's almost the exact same level of coverage as our NBA site.
And I'm sorry to interrupt this, but I think it's really important that people understand the WNBA site is indispensable at this point. Like just a brief story, if you forgive me for saying so. But again, like
Sure.
people need to understand how and why this matters. Okay. Elena Deladon, in her first 10 games in the 2015 season, had a player efficiency rating of 40.6. It was incredible.
Right.
How does it compare? I don't know at the time. I can't tell you. I can go and say, well, here's what LeBron James did over any 10 games in his entire career. I now, because of Sports Reference, can compare these spans. I now, because of Sports Reference, can see where things are in context. And so, in that same way that I'm able to now turn around and say, wow, Nneka Ogwumike in 2016 was not just efficient from the field, she was the most efficient from the field, if you go by effective field goal percentage, from anyone in WNBA history and anyone in NBA history.
Right.
Those types of understandings are baked into the work that you're doing. But so go ahead. So you've come
Yeah.
forward. WNBA has grown by leaps and bounds for you guys over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and similarly, we recently switched data providers on our soccer side so we could get coverage for 8 women's leagues around the world. So we have full coverage for NWSL, Frauen Bundesliga, Women's Super League, Women's Champions League, Women's World Cup, all of that. So and so that's become a real company focus for us. And so the Negro League project that we launched last 2 summers ago was another example of that, of bringing stats for ignored athletes that we wanted to have on the site. So all of those things, and now women's college basketball is the next thing we've trained our eyes on. So this was a 7-month project collecting. We very happy to work with Genius Sports, who's the official data provider for the NCAA, and they provided us with a lot of historical data around women's college basketball. And so that was the start of the process. And then from there, we had to build out had to start collecting. We're not quite 100% there, but start collecting conference players of the year, start collecting all the coaching information, start collecting all the tourney games. And so what we've launched with is basically 14 years of 14 seasons of data with full game logs, full player rosters, basically all the information that we have on the men's side. We're still filling in a few gaps here or there, and there may be a few we had an issue with our update this morning. So if you're on the site this morning, a few things may be missing, but we should get those back in a minute or two. But our goal is to have, completely equal delivery of the women's side and the men's side that we have in college basketball. And so, another big part of our company values is respect. And so for the athletes, we don't, we certainly don't want to do anything that presents us as less than the men's side. And so, if a user sees something that doesn't quite sit right with them, I'd really encourage them to tell us, and we can take a look at it and probably make a fix if you see something that looks that you feel is hitting wrong there. But it's all of that is a important company value to us, and I also think it's good business sense. I think the women's game is growing dramatically. And so I think in the next, 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a pretty significant, if not equal, pretty significant proportion of the men's interest as well. And so, so we're doing it for business reasons as well. So, that's going to continue to be something we focus on. I think, we're hoping to launch a softball site at some point, women's NCAA softball at some point. And so, all these things are tying together and continue to be areas of growth for us.
By the way, 2 things. One, parenthetically to what Sean said, you should email if you see stuff, because I've sent you guys, I don't know, a couple of dozen emails through the year, and the average response time is like 3 minutes. Like, it's ridiculous.
That's a little an exaggeration, but yeah,
it's absurd. Like, I don't want to over.
Well, I'm gonna have to give Aiden a big raise then. If Aiden and Katie are responding in 3 minutes, we're gonna probably have to up their salaries. But
fair enough. But yeah, by all means, do it. But the other part of it is just when, and I'll use again the conversation around the sport. When Sabrina Ionescu was having the type of career she was having at Oregon, there were a lot of people who compared her favorably, unfavorably, depending on it, to Sue Bird. Sue Bird might as well have done what she did in the dark ages. even though it was the 21st century.
Right.
You can't get those numbers so easily. And so having that type of historical reach, I feel like a lot of times people are upset that when people are in the women's basketball space, they compare to men. And there are loads of reasons for that. And some of them are problematic. Some of them are as simple as those numbers aren't there. You
Right.
can't go back and even get Sue Bird, like not somebody who did it in the shadows, you know?
Right. Right.
And so when people go to sports reference, it's real easy, right, to just look and say, oh, it's clickable. Oh, they must have just gotten it. There must have been an easy data collection. It's not an easy data collection. So, how do you go about trying and getting these numbers when society wide we have had a greater emphasis on making sure we know what the numbers are on the men's side, and some of the women's side stuff, it's just the stuff exists, but in somebody's attic, you know?
Right, right. Well, it's I mean it's a combination of efforts. We're pretty dogged in terms of how we collect this information. So we're I there are a couple things. So I mentioned the agreement with Genius, so that has taken us back to 09, 10. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're working on some other sources that we expect will get us back to 02, 03 before the tourney. We're hoping if we can clean out all there are a few kinks here and there, but if we can get that aligned, like 99.5% accurate and
Mm-hmm.
feel good about it, we'll launch with that and then fill it out. But a lot of stuff we have on the men's side. For instance, there was a gentleman, Dave Quinn, who loved men's college basketball, and he just entered data into spreadsheets from like the 60s, 70s, 50s,
Yeah.
and I think our reputation is such that people know that we'll value what they do. We'll treat it well. We'll give them a lot of credit for what they do. We'll pay them if that's appropriate for the data that they provide. And so we have dozens of people who have come at who we find through various sources or who reach out to us and say, "Hey, I have this data. Would you be interested in it?" And it finds its way onto our site. So we recently, I mean, this is really esoteric, but though my data director would probably disagree with me, we just got game logs for the NBL from not the Australian League, but the 1940s Pro Basketball League that like George Mikan started in. And so he's super excited about that. We're probably at some point in the next year going to get that onto the site. We've also collected ABL stats from somebody who's collected those. And so we hope to add, pre-WNBA professional women's data as well. So we really want to take the women's side back to 81, 82, and when they started playing in Division One, and see if we can get close to a complete history. I don't think we'll get game logs probably, but I think it's certainly possible we can get season stats. A lot of our
I mean, just to that point, right? I mean, Retro Sheet is what
right.
did a lot of the game by game on the baseball side. So again, the things that we kind of take for granted now, and I just think that's important for those in the women's sports space to understand that it took that kind of hard work. I would even just put out a call. We do a lot of work about the WBL, about the professional league that ran from the late 1970s up through 1981. If you have these numbers, get in
Right.
touch with Sports Reference,
Right.
because they will give it a good home. I want to talk a little bit more about that and about
Sure.
your legacy and day to day, and what it all means. I do
Mhm.
first want to talk about, and those who have listened for a long time know how much I love to talk about Built Bar. Built Bar is a delicious treat without all the fat and calories. I mean, I live on them. I do broadcasts up at Bard at my alma mater. And so, all right, what am I going to do? I'm going to eat a Built Bar on my way up. I'm going to eat a Built Bar between the men's and women's games, and after the doubleheader is over, I'm eating a Built Bar once again with my tea to try and get my voice back. It's because it is made with real chocolate, but it's 17 grams of protein, only 130 calories, and 4 grams of net sugar. So you don't have to wait around to get a box anymore. I get them at built.com, but you can go to your nearest Walmart in the pharmacy section, pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate or coconut puffs. Sam's Club has brownie batter and churro. Brownie batter is my wife's favorite. Churro is one that I love. Make sure you go get them. Built.com is the other way to do it. And make sure when you eat your Built Bar that you tell whoever's around, whoever's nearby, that Grandma Myrna sent you. So, Sean, I was covering Seton Hall versus DePaul women's basketball this past week. And at halftime, I was wandering around at Walsh Gymnasium, which is a beautiful, historic place, and which I love very much. And they had the plaque, they had the trophy, the 1952-53 team that won the NIT. And I was able to go right to your site. That's what I did. I went back to my seat, went to your site, and read all about that season, about Walter Dukes, who went on to the NBA, about Richie Regan, for whom the place is named after. And I bring that up just because it's one of an almost incalculable number of places where you're not just documenting stats, but you're able to bring history to life in a way that preserves these people's memories. As a historian, that matters to me a great deal. And I guess I wonder, even beyond just the numbers, what's been the most gratifying conversation you've had with someone who said, hey, you've been able to bring this to life. You've helped bring this memory to life.
We've had many conversations like that. A couple that come to mind. We get gotten a lot of emails from relatives who have looked up their grandfather, their great grandfather, their uncles on Baseball Reference. We have minor league stats going back to the 1800s, and even like Class D, Triple I League. Somebody playing in Clarinda, Iowa, in 1911. And so, we've had a number of conversations like that. The one that I kind of have posted outside my office is I got a letter from a gentleman who I think was like 85 years old. And he wrote to thank us because he had found his page on Baseball Reference. He was a minor league player. And he had looked at his rosters and remembered the names of all of his teammates from when he was, 22 years old. And was able to go on Facebook and actually found a number of them and reconnected with them and stuff. Oh, wow. And so that felt really, really meaningful and really gratifying that that was the case. So it's not it's great when Cal Ripken tells you that he's been on the site and looked at stuff and things like that. But those are the ones that we really, that value of respect, that, we're the home for a lot of these people's statistical legacies in a sense. And so we try to treat that with respect and make sure that we're doing it in a good way.
Well, like I said, I have been delighted. It is like my daughter said to me this morning, your birthday is on Friday. This is kind of like a birthday present for you, to me. And it is. And I would say I value the time I spend with my family, and I spend a lot of time with them. But if I really take a hard look at my life, I've probably spent just as much time at sportsreference.com. And so
I can definitely say that. So
I'm sure of it. Well, Sean, truly, what you're doing here, it belongs in the Baseball Hall of Fame. It belongs in, by the time it's said and done, every Hall of Fame you can imagine. And so for you to be training your eye on women's sports like this means everything. And so I encourage everyone to go subscribe to StatHead immediately and make sure you are following everything that's happening and everything that is about to happen over at sportsreference.com. Thank you for all that you're doing. To our listeners, thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen today. Now make your second listen Game to Game NBA, which, by the way, is it's a basketball league, but it's for men. Sean, you guys should look into that. Do you guys have any men's basketball stats? Is that something you do?
We do have the NBA and men's college basketball, but not this league, not yet. The three on three leagues actually been pushing us to try and carry them, but we've resisted so far.
It's a matter of time, I feel like. But so game to game NBA is every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Dame to Dame covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. So follow Dame to Dame on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. And of course, come join us tomorrow and 6 days a week where we cover women's basketball here at Locked On Women's Basketball. I'll be with you again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Howard Megdal wishing you a wonderful Wednesday. If you want to know where I'll be at Sports Reference.
Ogunbowale for the win. Good!
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.